Tashidele, Namaskar, good evening to all of you. I, on behalf of International Buddhist Confederation, IBC, would like to welcome you all to the Dharma Talk Series 7, which is a part of ongoing program started by IBC fortnightly called the International Dhamma Talk Series that commenced on 19th of November 2021. Today, we are very happy and honored to have with us Reverend and highly revered Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, the founder of Siddhartha's Intent, who would be teaching us on the topic of contemporary issues, practicing the path in the world today. After the teaching, we will be having 20 minutes of question and answer session. And I would like to welcome most revered Rinpoche, Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, for the Dhamma talk today on the topic of contemporary issues, practicing the path in the world today. I take this opportunity to briefly present you the biodata of Rinpoche. Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche. The present Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, Thubten Chogi Yamzo, was born in 1951 in eastern Bhutan. He was recognized as a Tulku Rinpoche by His Holiness Sakya Trizin and received empowerment and teachings from many of the greatest masters of Tibetan Buddhism, including His Holiness the 16th Karmapa, His Holiness Duzum Rinpoche, and Lama Sonam Zampo, who was his paternal and maternal grandfathers, Chatul Rinpoche, Nyosul Khen Rinpoche, Khenpo Ape, and many others. His root guru was Dilgu Khyentse Rinpoche, who began training Rinpoche from the very early age of 7 years. While still a teenager, Rinpoche built a small retreat center in Gezing in Sikkim and soon began traveling and teaching around the world. In the year 1980, he began the restoration of Dzongsar Monastery in Dargay, the responsibility of which he had inherited from his previous incarnation, Jamyang Khyentse Chogi Lodro. He established the Dzongsar Institute in India, now Dzongsar Khyentse Chogi Lodro in Chautara, which has grown to be one of the most respected institutions for advanced dialectical study. He also oversees 2 monasteries in Bhutan and has established Dharma centers in Australia, Europe, North America, and Asia. He has written several books and made award-winning films. His Holiness Rinpoche continuously travels all over the world practicing and teaching the Dharma. Now, I would request Venerable Dr. Dhamma Pia, Secretary General, IBC, to kindly welcome our most revered esteemed Rinpoche for today's Dhamma talk teaching. Venerable Dr. Dhammapia.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dudiyampi tatiyampi. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. A very good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone. Those who have participated from different time zone across the globe. I take this opportunity on behalf of IBC, International Buddhist Confederation, and also on behalf of the Buddhists of India and the Indian people and the Buddhists of the world, very wholeheartedly welcome the most venerable Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche today to this Dhamma Talk Series. We have started Dhamma Talk Series to reach out the invaluable wisdom, the Dhamma, to as many people as possible around the world for the welfare, benefit, and happiness of all. We had teachers, Dhamma teachers from different traditions, from Theravada traditions, from Nalanda traditions, from Mahayana traditions, mostly venerable monks and nuns. We are very happy to have today very eminent, renowned, and knowledgeable Reverend, most Venerable Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche. I most welcome you, Venerable, here. Also, I welcome everyone who have joined from across the globe in large number. We have a capacity in this Zoom only 1,000. We never had this many number of the participation, like almost 1,000 already completed. I mean, this touched. We hardly had say, around 100 plus, something like that. So we are very happy for this kind of participation. And I have been told that there are many more who wanted to join, but maybe due to this limitation or the restriction, many of you could not join, but still you can watch His Holiness our Venerable teaching from our other platform like Facebook, then YouTube. IBC has through IBC Facebook page and YouTube. So most venerable, welcome to this Dhamma talk, and kindly you may start your teaching, please, venerable.
Thank you so much, Venerable Dharmapia, for starting with the invocation of the refuge, which we all need all the time. Also, thank you for saying very kind and generous words about me. I'm very honored to have been invited to this platform. I know this is a very significant in India. And as many of you know, I have so much feelings. I have so much attachment, probably, with India, even though I myself is born outside of India and raised as not a citizen of India, but India is something so special for me. Not just the Dharma, not just the fact that the Buddha was born in India and all the teachings that we follow have been originated from India, but everything about India, the culture, the language, landscapes, I don't know, from West Bengal to South India, from South India to North India, the love and admiration and awe for India is like never ending for me. So for me to have been invited for this forum is very big honor. Now, I'm supposed to be talking about something to do with the contemporary issue and practicing the path. So I guess we are talking about three important elements here. Contemporary, what does it mean by contemporary? And then practicing, what do we mean by practice? And then of course, most importantly, the Dharma, the path. I believe contemporary or current has something to do with the modernity. In other words, maybe something like progressive thinking. Many of us will know that Buddha, during his time, he was very contemporary and he was very progressive. He was actually a revolutionary. At the risk of saying something negative about other religion, I'd like to point out that unlike many religions in this world, which sort of emerge as a result of political and social, upheaval or situations, Buddha Dharma actually started in an entirely different way. Shakyamuni Buddha was not a political he never had a political problem. He was not persecuted politically. He didn't have any, social challenges. He was actually born in a warrior or a royal family, very well, situated. Worldly speaking, perfect life. His was quest for the truth. After seeing the real reality of what we call life, he was not satisfied, and he wanted a deeper truth. And this is how so-called Buddha Dharma began. So actually, when we talk about contemporary or modernity, the core of the Buddha Dharma is never really gone astray from modernity or current or progressive thinking. This is what I would argue. But I think it is important to understand what we mean by contemporary. I think this is kind of a big topic. In many ways, so-called contemporary issues or contemporary time, we are talking about a time that is, like a side effect of politically sort of contemporary. I don't know if there's a such word. The nature of the politics in the world has changed a lot. And because of that, we are now going through a modernity that has a different kind of a political situation. And then therefore, then of course, when we talk about modernity, fashion, lifestyle, art. And also, I think when we talk about contemporary or modernity, we are also talking about loss of faith. We are also talking about ideas such as secularism. We now claim that we prefer reasoning rather than believing. These are, I guess, sort of the element, the character of so-called contemporary or modernity. Then, of course, there's a very big element of what so-called contemporary or modernity, which is science. The rise of science have probably contributed and changed the definition of what we mean by modernity. Then along with this, there's also a rise of individualism. Just about 100 years ago, people don't even have right to marry, who to marry. Now, people have right to marry who they like, broadly speaking. Not only that, we now live in a time when people choose to have whatever gender they prefer. If a man wishes to be a woman, currently there is ability and there is a facility and there is a right to do so, and vice versa. And then I guess there's also a rise of urban living. Now this has changed, of course, our lifestyle. Just about 100 years ago, when the sun sets, then probably the only thing we could do is sleep, go to bed. Now this has changed. In fact, the whole so-called night life begins. And as many of we know, in the urban life, night is not necessarily a time to sleep for a lot of young people. And then we have phenomena such as packed food, which is, I guess, sort of the impact of so-called modernity. And what this does is many times our people forget how sunshine or a fresh water is important because everything is packed. Just about 100 years ago, the farmers know how important sunshine is or the rainfall is. But now most of the people can eat whatever they want in the, like packed food situation. And then, as I was saying, individualism has become a very important, especially in so-called democratic society. And that has its own, impact. Probably because of that, in the modern world, we probably are suffering a lot with the self-hate. Maybe 100 years ago, we don't hate ourselves that much, but now we do. We then also have a problem of loneliness. Yes, of course, we have incredible sort of technology, supposedly to, answer this loneliness and alienation, such as social media. But for some reason, no matter what we have, what kind of access to unite ourselves, to, entertain ourselves, the loneliness, alienations, boredom, self-hate seems to be not really getting less if it's not getting more. So so-called the current situation or the modernity, also so-called the modernity or the current time, the contemporary time, probably we enjoy a lot with the abundance of material things. We really enjoy this. But maybe we are so deprived emotionally and spiritually. So within this context, we need to think of what is practice and what is dharma. Now there's something much more important, I feel, and that is the definition of contemporary or modernity, which is, especially in places like India, I don't know so much about Egypt. I'm just bringing Egypt, the Arabic civilization, just because, like India, China, Middle East, these are supposedly really, really ancient civilization. But if you look at India or China, both, so-called current, contemporary, or modernity is basically westernization. Many times when we talk about modernization, we are talking about westernization. And this, I think I'm singling this out because I think this is important. Because with the westernized modernity, there is, even now, you and I, we are talking in English. The language, the usage of language. And language, as we all know, is very, very powerful, because with a language comes the definition, what we mean by this language. And if you are looking at the next generation of Indians and the next generation of Chinese, I don't know much about Middle East, but I have a little bit of a doubt that they're similar, is very, very westernized. Now, within this light, in this kind of westernized or so-called modernized, what do we mean by practice? What do we mean by dharma? This is something that some of us, we should pay attention. Dharma, as many of you know, is really especially the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, is timeless, and it should be beyond specific culture, of course, gender. Dharma in Sanskrit or in Pali means the truth. Among many other different meanings, one of the essential meaning of the Dharma is the truth. So practicing the Dharma actually has a lot to do with how much a person is really getting acquainted with this truth. So if I may explain, sort of give some example, just for the sake of, in case if there are some people who are quite new with this. Buddha Dharma, especially as taught in the most fundamental way in the many of the Pali Sutras and also in the Mahayana Sutras, is really about the truth. And when we talk about the truth, we are not talking about any exotic, mythical, magical truth. We are talking about a very raw, mundane, simple, naked truth. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. Impermanent of everything is the truth. Dukkha of everything is the truth. And anatta, selflessness of everything is the truth. And practicing, essentially, what it really must do is to initially get acquainted with this truth and then really live with this truth. Lead our life with this truth. Look at the world through this truth. Interact with the people or the environment with this truth in your head. This is what is meant by practicing. Yes, of course. Buddhism, out of necessity, needed to apply different kinds of method and discipline for different kinds of people. As right at the beginning, Venerable Dhammapiya chanted the refuge. This is one of the most fundamental so-called practice. We as the follower of this particular path, one of the most foundational path or the practice is refuge. And essentially, what we really mean by refuge is surrendering to this truth, the truth of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. This is the real refuge. When we take refuge, we are taking refuge. We must take refuge, and we must take refuge to someone or something that will not deceive us, that will not falter us, that will not take us take us away from the truth. The refuge object has to be trustable. Refuge object has to be authentic, in other words. Now, anicca, for instance, impermanence. Impermanence have never failed to be impermanent. From the time Buddha taught this, even before Buddha taught the truth of anicca, that things are impermanent. It's not as if Buddha made things impermanent. Things are impermanent in New Delhi, things are impermanent in New York, things are impermanent in New Hampshire. It is the truth and it cannot be changed. Surrendering to this truth will never disappoint us. And that is, and really knowing that, accepting that, getting acquainted with that, and remembering that again and again is what really is meant by so-called practice. But again, as I said earlier, we have tradition, we have culture, we have ritual such as chanting, such as reciting, such as accumulation of refuge prayers, such as circumambulating Buddha statues or the stupas or Mahaviras or the Bodhi trees. These methods are meant for different people. Different people need different kinds of reminder. Different people have different capacities. For some, raw truth cannot be chewed and swallowed and cannot be digested. For this kind of people, we need to teach or practice more sweetened, mashed, something that you can swallow, digestible truth. And oftentimes, this then becomes a sidetrack. So what I want to say is that today, in the current world situation, I think we end up thinking that so-called practicing the Buddha Dharma is doing such as a circumambulation, such as chanting mantras, chanting prayers, or shaving hair, wearing a maroon robe, living in a monastery, or sitting straight even, or so-called doing mindfulness, or so-called becoming vegetarian. These are all methods, but these are not really good example of so-called practice. If these rituals, such as sitting straight, such as doing so-called mindfulness meditation for 9 days, I don't know, such as applying discipline of not eating meat, if these practices does not take you closer to the truth, then it is not really a practice. If a person can get used to, get acquainted with, get comfortable with, accept these truths that I've been talking about, the method, how you do it, standing, sitting, not chanting, it really doesn't really matter. Now, earlier I was talking, because I wanted, we were talking about like contemporary issues, so-called modern issues. So let's say, so how in the current time we are ending up probably misunderstanding, misconceiving lots of the Buddhist teachings because of the sort of current influence, I would say. Okay, let's choose, for instance, the word dukkha. Anicca, dukkha, and anatta, dukkha. The word dukkha is loosely translated as a suffering. And what is meant by suffering in English, and what is meant by dukkha in Buddhism is a big difference. Or maybe precisely I should say, what is meant by dukkha is far more than what is meant by the word suffering. Right now, many times we Buddhists, when we talk about dukkha, we are talking about obvious pain and suffering, such as death, old age, sickness. But dukkha is not only just that. Dukkha is actually everything that we have is a dukkha. In fact, everything we treasure. Okay, we can choose some of the current or the modern values. Let's choose individualism. Individualism is cherished. Individualism is very hyped now. And because of that, people talk about, human rights, democracy, universal suffrage, parliament, all of that. But this whole individualism is actually a lump of dukkha. It is not individualism, individual rights brings, it is, it's not just it brings, it is by nature, so to speak. It comes with some sort of a dissatisfaction. So, it's a bit like ice cream, for instance. Ice cream, for a lot of people, maybe it is a bliss, but every ounce, every drop of ice cream has a potential to do a damage for a lot of us. So everything that we have in our life, so-called freedom, like freedom of speech, for instance. That is what we value so much in our currently, in the modern life. But this, as you know, this brings a lot of dukkha, a lot of suffering because of freedom of speech. I'm not saying that we should not have a freedom of speech. What I'm saying is that it all has dukkha. And Buddha got that 2,500 years ago. This is why I say Buddha's teaching, the core teaching of the Buddha is not outdated. Especially in a place like India, where you have a totally different sort of setting I'm not only just talking about mountains and rivers and music and food, but history, language. Now, the new kind of terms, new kind of values that Indian next generation put so much effort to acquire, to implement. I don't know how much different kind of dukkha it is bringing. And sometimes maybe this kind of dukkha is even unnecessary. Like great Chandrakirti from Nalanda University said, many times we may have a poisonous snake in our home, but we tell others we don't have elephant. Oftentimes, the modern young generations, especially in India, may be learning a new set of dukkha that they don't really need. And then they try to sort that out. These are something that we need to contemplate. And contemplating and knowing these truths are what I call practice. Now, as I was saying in the beginning, that here we have sort of three sort of elements, right? The current issue, then we have the path. See, this question has been raised many times. I have been asked many times how relevant Buddhism is now. Does Dharma still have a relevance for today's world? As if the Dharma need to be sort of updated or changed. The core teaching of the Buddha Dharma, especially on the ultimate level, there is nothing to change, no need to be changed. It is very relevant. And probably I would say it's now more relevant than ever. But the method, the means to practice can be changed in different time, for different people, for different language, different culture. So when we say Buddhism, Buddha Dharma, as a Buddhist, we need to not only see the teachings of the Buddha as some sort of a means to lead a specific society, specific, culture. Like it should not be seen as survival kit. In fact, as I was saying, Buddha's quest is driven by wanting to know the truth regarding so-called life, so-called universe, so-called me, self, others. And this should be relevant. And this need to be emphasized. So Buddhism, so okay, the contemporary path. Now Buddha Dharma is quite vast, and if I may be bold here and express this, even though India gave us the Buddha, the Dharma, India has unfortunately lost a lot. So-called Buddha Dharma. Maybe recently there is some interest in the Buddha Dharma, but I feel this Buddha Dharma that Indians are referring to is very intertwined with a set of culture, set of tradition, and sometimes even marred a little bit with certain political issues. And this is where I think the next generation, young generation Indians, if they want to treasure, and they should, because as I have always kind of half jokingly teased my Indian friends, India's best product that India has exported outside of India is Buddha Dharma, nothing else. But India has lost a lot. It is now in some pockets here and there, is coming back, maybe, but it is still very much seen with some sort of a cultural context, and this probably is maybe not the right way to understand so-called the path, and especially in this day and age. All the element of so-called modernity that I was citing earlier, such as this generation and the next generation's biggest challenge being alienation, loneliness, self-hate, etc. And now more than ever, supposedly, the rise of artificial intelligence. Because of that, maybe there's even a big question such as, who are we? What is so-called cognizance? Now, here, like many, many Indian wisdom tradition, Buddhism has incredible treasury of answers. Buddhism has for 2,500 years of experience, not only intellectually, not only academically, but hundreds and thousands and millions have put these wisdom into practice for years and lifetimes. So this is where generally the Buddhist, and especially the younger Indian, can contribute to the next world. So-called current today is going to become outdated, old-fashioned by next year. Buddhism offers incredible information about mind, they have, of course, related to mind, about matter, training the mind, and also seeing the truth about the mind. But in order to understand this, we need to learn to go out of certain way of thinking. Even the current Western thinking in order to understand subjects such as anatta, shunyata, mahakaruna, scientific, rational, logical way, and especially the modern, so-called modern, which is a Western way of thinking, will not really comprehend the teachings of the Buddha, especially subjects such as shunyata. So this is my brief summary, if you like, about the current Buddhist, how to practice the path in the current situation. And if you have any specific question regarding this, I will try to answer.
Thank you, Reverend Rinpoche, for the wonderful presentation of the contemporary issues, practicing the path in the world today. Now we have time. Rinpoche has given more time for the question and answer session. We have today a lot of participants for the program, which has crossed 1,000, and then still people have been waiting. But since our limit was 1,000, many would not have come, been able to join. Now we have a question and answer session. So I would request the people who are participating through Zoom to kindly raise your hand so that we can pick up one by one for the questions. I would request the questions to be precise and brief so that more people will be getting the opportunity to ask about their doubt to Rinpoche. So now I would request you, because we have chat box, but questions have not come, and then there are many things on the thing, so we are not able to comprehend the whole thing. So I would request you to raise your hand who have questions, so that I can pick you up and then you can put your question to Venerable Rinpoche.
Flappy.
I think you would like to have a question. Flappy Jwala. Please go ahead. Unmute.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Rinpoche. May you have a very long life. I mean, have the merit to see your activities expand far and wide. Rinpoche, I would like to ask you about something about practicing in the modern world and practicing in general. I heard a very nice Lama say yesterday that we need a lot of courage just to listen to the Dharma and to take it inside. So could you give any advice on how to develop that sort of courage that helps us to take the jewel of Dharma in this life and use it in this modern world? Thank you.
Okay. I hope I'm explaining what he meant. So I hope we are talking about the same thing. But yes, he's very right. This is actually mentioned in many of the Buddha's teachings, that you need to have courage and you need to be open-minded. You need to sort of think out of the box. Modern people really talk about it. They wish to be out of the box. But rarely the modern people do that, because we human beings, we are so scared of being left out, being outcasted, and being, I don't know, we are very complicated. We want to be special, but at the same time, we want to be included. So this is a dukkha again. I was talking about the dukkha. This is dukkha. And especially when it comes to the Dharma, because the Dharma is all about truth, truth is very scary. I mean, that, so yeah, maybe small things like, like even like, let's say the teachings on karma, very broad teachings on karma, things like, if you do something bad with a bad intention, you will reap bad experience. This much maybe we are courageous to accept. But if the teachings of the karma gets deeper and deeper, then we have to really question, what do we mean by bad karma or good karma? What do we mean by bad? Because bad is very, very relative. Maybe, for instance, a lot of people think, living a long life is a good thing. But we don't know that, because maybe it's good to live short, so that you have less time to do, nasty stuff. So we don't know this, right? So when we think more deeper, then it gets, then we need to be really sort of broad, and we need to be really open, and we need to be thinking out of the box. And yes, for instance, like anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Okay, just this is very, very, like broad. Okay, so don't take it too, literally. Like anicca, maybe we can sort of digest, because things are impermanent, you can see it, sort of. Okay, even that is difficult. If we really talk most subtle point of anicca, it's too scary. Now, between anicca, dukkha, and anatta, dukkha is a much more, you need much more bravery to swallow that one. Now, selflessness, the anatta, that's too scary. So that's, only, you need to be prepared, so to speak. Thank you.
Mr. Jalu would like, Jalu would like to ask. Yes, उसको unmute किया. Yes.
Yes. Hello, Rinpoche. I just was having problems unmuting. My question's with the cultural aspects of Dharma is not really Dharma. Yet at the same time, I'm meeting lots of people who are not having the culture aspect of Dharma, going for the meditation, really going for it, yet not, they seem to be not achieving the results that they're seeking. So at the same time, yourself was brought up in the culture, but you probably, I assume, learned a lot outside of the culture. So it's this balance. We can't really say the culture is not really Dharma, can we? Can we? That's my question.
Very good, very good. Well, yeah, I would say culture is not really Dharma, but culture definitely is, is an indispensable thing. This is inconvenient truth, so to speak. It is like you need a culture. Without that, human beings just don't know how to communicate, right? But the problem with the culture, problem with this is, okay, not really problem with this, but problem that, or something that we have to be mindful is that we need to always be brave to really see culture as a culture as we walk the path. So this is what I was saying earlier. You can chant prayers, poetries, or the stanzas from the sutras and the shastras regarding impermanence, and that may be very inspiring. You can sing, you can dance, citing those, and that could be very, very inspiring and helpful. But at the end of the day, this must help you bring closer to the truth of impermanence. If it does, then it's good. If it doesn't, then there's something that you need to be a little bit careful. So this is what I mean by, this should be really the definition of practice. So basically what I'm saying is, today, if I have let's say a student who recite a shloka that has something to do with the impermanence, and he recites this 100 times a day. But diligently. But I would almost wish that this student maybe not necessarily chanting this, sutras or the stanzas, but somehow the message or the truth of impermanence have gone in his head quite deeply. So not necessarily he feels melancholic or sad, but also, some sort of openness and acceptance that everything is impermanent. That I would rather consider that as a so-called practice than being able to chant. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rinpoche. My question was difficult to answer.
Yes, somebody is raising the hand. Yes. Madam Effie. Yes.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche La. My question is about what you said about the different methods that can take us to see the truth and how they can sidetrack us. So how can we know which is the most suitable method for us, and how can we make sure that we don't get sidetracked from seeing the truth using this method?
This is a difficult one. I think this is why I think a mentor, a coach, or some sort of a Kalyana Mitra, spiritual friend who pokes you, who sort of, I don't know, guides you, who sort of gives you a guidance is necessary. I know that, again, this is a current issue. The current issue, this is, I think, kind of important. Recently, I was talking with some Europeans. I think after probably the French Revolution, whatever, there's a strong mistrust with political leader, I don't know, whatever, some dictatorial, authoritarian, etc., etc. And then, of course, lately, or I mean, not necessarily lately, throughout the centuries, there's been a lot of spiritual charlatans who also really abuse the students in many different ways. So all of this, of course, there is a strong mistrust to coach or spiritual teacher and all of that. So as a result of that, I think currently in the modern world, there are school of thoughts who thinks that they can just basically do it themselves. And I don't know, maybe I'm teasing, if there are people who are Krishnamurti lover here, probably I'm teasing you a little bit. Krishnamurti really sort of promote, no teacher, none of this. I sometimes question how much of that is really a residual, because yes, of course, I'm not at all, supporting the dictator or like a big, authoritarian. First of all, the Kalyana Mitra has got nothing to do with the, authoritarian. It's got really nothing to do with authoritarian stuff. But anyway, that is altogether a different issue, another time maybe. Anyway, there is that strong opposition together with this value of individualism. So currently, I mean, if you look at the spiritual world, there are a lot of gurus, for instance, very popular gurus, who also don't have their own gurus. Have you noticed that? A lot of popular gurus, they don't have a living guru. I mean, they don't have a gurus. They usually cite like they got inspired, when they're in a beach or somewhere. They don't have a guru. Now, maybe I'm being very, very traditional maybe I'm being very conservative, but for me, I don't know, that is something that I personally will not trust. But, the current trend is, there's this, okay, you do it yourself. You do not, like self-help, right? Self-help. Wow, self-help, that is a really risky. I mean, I heard just the other day some social scientists talking about, how people talk about, follow your feeling, follow your heart. But modern people cannot follow your heart. Modern people cannot follow your feeling, because modern people's feeling and modern people's heart is all hacked by Amazon, by Facebook, by Instagram. We don't think independently. So every time we are following Amazon, we are following Facebook, we are following, that's what we call independent thinking. So, but coming back to your question, I'm sorry, I'm getting carried away a little bit. Coming back to your question, you need to, earlier I was talking about thinking out of the box. So yes, of course, everything is a bit of a gambling. I mean, even drinking a cup of tea is a gambling. Who knows? Probably this is the tea that will kill you. This is it. This may be the tea that will upset you, the rest of your life. So I think some sort of a coach probably is important, because at the end of the day, how much should we really trust our own judgment? Again, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't answer your question, but a lot of time has gone into this. Okay.
Yes.
Miss Maria.
Miss Maria, you would like to? Yes. Miss Maria, yes, unmute.
Okay. Thank you so much. Rinpoche, thank you so much for this precious Dhamma talk. I have a single question. I have been trying to meditate on shunyata, but it's difficult for me as a Westerner. I would like you, if you could point some method to improve the meditation on emptiness. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, this is a very big question, and this is a very practical question, meaning that, it would be better if there's a much more interaction between you and me personally. But anyway, since you ask, actually, this is the thing. Actually, all the Buddha's teaching, now this is coming from the Mahayana Sutra. All the Buddha's teachings are in one way or another leading you to the shunyata. For instance, even anicca, dukkha, and anatta. The first anicca, like impermanence, right? Impermanence, meditation on impermanence. You think that that's what Buddha, if that was not the Buddha's final word. He taught impermanence meditation for those who cannot chew or digest anatta right away. If you talk about shunyata, anicca, impermanence, it's sort of understandable, it's sort of digestible, it's sort of making sense. Things are impermanent. So in a way, anicca, like teachings on impermanence, it's like lowering this person towards the shunyata. But anyway, for the right now, practically, all the vipassana, especially vipassana of dharma, like looking at the body, looking at the feeling, looking at the mind, and looking at the dharma, meaning reference. So whatever comes in your mind, okay, I'm making it very practical, just very, very brief here, because this is a very vast subject. Whatever comes in your mind, be aware of that. Don't make any judgment. Don't also follow this thought. Next thought will come, just look. Another thought will come, just look. That probably is the most practical and the easiest way to reach to shunyata for now.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we can take one or two more questions. And you can.
Okay, so thanks a lot for your inspiring words. I've got a question concerning artificial intelligence, and you mentioned social media as well as a challenge at the times we have. But thinking out of the box, can't it be a chance also? Depends on how we use it, for sure, but can't it be a chance to spread the Buddhism to younger generations as well?
Well, I hope so. I myself, I'm totally blind with this. So I can only talk some traditional, like concepts and philosophy, but I really need you people and younger generations to help me to understand the language of artificial intelligence, so that we can actually collaborate and then translate that into understandable language. But a little bit that I know about artificial intelligence somehow gives me a lot of hope. It tells me that now Buddha Dharma, this is a chance for the Buddha Dharma to come in, because I think artificial intelligence is going to disrupt a lot of identity. I mean, let's say you are a nurse. In 10 years, artificial intelligence will do that job. So you are no more nurse. So you cannot say you are a nurse. So who are you? So, this is probably very kindergarten level of artificial intelligence knowledge. But this identity crisis, solving the identity crisis is where the Buddha for 2,500 years have been really, really experienced. And I think this can really be a beneficial.
Thank you.
Yes, next.
Amelia.
Miss Amelia, yes. Yes, please.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for your precious teachings. Rinpoche, I see a lot of the modernity, the youngsters, they see Buddhism, they put it in the religion pocket bag, and then it creates a distance, a detachment. It's a religion and not being interested. And then is how Rinpoche, your views on that. Perhaps linking Buddhism more with science, and there is this Mind and Science Institute, and His Holiness Dalai Lama is quite intense in that. Maybe with this modernity, where we are just bombarded by technology, so many different things, would get the youngsters to start to take it more seriously, like to look at Buddhism as something which is not, oh, it's a religion, I'm not interested. So that's one thing. And then the other one, yes, AI, it can be seen as scary, and robots that even behave as if they were sentient. But maybe there is one place where science could help by looking at the difference of AI, as much sophisticated as it can be, but how that differentiates from a sentient. And in that way, start to point people somehow to the truth by this differentiation. What we have, which is different from robots. And I don't know, I think that that could be, anyway, it's just to see what Rinpoche thinks about that. And thank you so much.
Well, I think I have said earlier with a question earlier, I don't have much knowledge on science, artificial intelligence, and so on. One thing though, I have a little worry is because of the modernization that I'm talking mainly towards the Indian, so the traditional society like Indians or Chinese, for instance. Because of so-called modernization, lot of people who actually take Buddhist ideas and out of so-called necessity, they tend to not use the Buddhist jargon, which is understandable because you need to communicate. But I'm also afraid that many times, it's a bit like little bit of whatever a person understood from a system such as a Madhyamika or a Abhidharma, they choose and then they use it in a totally different language or a different term. Somehow it may end up not necessarily giving service to the Buddha Dharma. Somehow things may get lost. For instance, like a yoga now. Yoga now is, I believe yoga is really, coming from Patanjali Sutra, whatever, it's really about balancing body and mind and so on and so forth. But now it's all about to make yourself beautiful. And now many, many times the yoga terms and nuances are also hidden because it's almost too Indian, too religious, I don't know. Similarly, Buddhism, there's something called mindfulness. And then a lot of mindfulness techniques, they are not really given for the understanding of the truth. They're not even interested in the truth. They're more interested in relaxing the mind, which is fine, of course. I wish people are relaxed and stress-free. But stakeholder of Buddhism must pay some attention to this. After all, in the West, how many people talk about copyright and so on and so forth? Okay.
Thank you. I think we will take the last question now. There must be many questions, but we are now at 6:30, the closing time. So the last question that we will take. Yes. Mr. Sonam, please go ahead with your question. Unmute her.
Hi, Rinpoche. My question is, since I began practicing Buddhism, my fear of death and samsara has been increasing a lot instead of diminishing. And I was wondering if it's something natural or if it could be a problem. That's it. Thank you.
And can you repeat that, please? Repeat, please.
Okay. So ever since I began practicing Buddhism, I see that my fear of dying and my fear of samsara is increasing a lot instead of diminishing. And I was wondering if it's something natural or if it could be a problem.
Okay, it's a little bit, okay. I would say this. It is definitely an effect of practicing, let's say, impermanence. But understanding and practicing the impermanence should not give you just this angle of life. Death and the ugliness about life is not just one, this is just one side of life, you know. Impermanence should also give you hope. It should also give you choice. It should also, you know, it should also make you open. It should also make you, I don't know, fearless, because everything is impermanent. So I think if you continue practicing, you hopefully you will transcend this stage of just not liking the life or afraid of samsara or fear of death, but reach to a point where you think, okay, death is a matter of time, and just as I'm afraid of death, I'm also afraid of birth. Just as I like the birth, I also will like death. And then eventually you will also transcend the duality of death and the birth. This is what we should be hoping for. So, you know, the dharma practice should not really make you see the world only through one angle. It should go beyond. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It has been a wonderful, precious teaching by Venerable Rinpoche. Now, I would request Venerable Charse Khyentse Jamjuk Choden Rinpoche, who is the Deputy Secretary General of IBC, to kindly present the vote of thanks for teachings of Venerable Jamjuk Choden Rinpoche.
Okay. Good evening to all. It's a great pleasure to present a vote of thanks to Your Eminence, Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, on this occasion by representing the host International Buddhist Confederation. Rinpoche just presented 7th talk in the series of International Dhamma Talk. The IBC has been organizing for some time, and we look forward to have more talks under this banner. And Rinpoche, as all of you know quite well, is an internationally renowned Dharma speaker, and he has a great follower all over the world. And I'm very happy to attend this talk of Rinpoche, which is a down-to-earth, practical, addressing current issues as the topic was presented, contemporary issues, practicing the path in the world today. So finally, I would like to wish Rinpoche great health and longevity, and may your holy missions expand and kind of touch more and more people all over the world for the benefit of all. Thank you very much for your time and your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche, and thank you, Rinpoche, very much for your great time and the precious teaching. Thank you for all the participants who have joined the teaching from all across the world, from the different countries. It has been a great, precious teaching for all of us. Thank you very much.